City built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. My reflection: you are the salt of the earth. This speaks to the impact we have on everyone we meet and every situation in which we find ourselves. Our saltiness may come in the form of speaking truth to power. It may be that you are addressing the United Nations or some other august body. You may have to address this Parliament on a sensitive matter. You may choose to be silent when God wants you to speak, but you may fear repercussions. You may choose to be passive when you are meant to be stirred to action. Do your best to leave a sweet taste in the mouth of others. But if God needs you to be a dose of Cersei, then do it. Speak your truth in love, even if it has to be done firmly. You are the light of the world. For too many, these are dark days. They may be suffering from a traumatic childhood or adolescence. They may be victims of crime. They may be bereaved and feeling comfortless. They may be recently separated or divorced and feel abandoned and rejected. They may be childless and wish children. They may have more children than they can care for adequately and know that they are neglecting their needs. Darkness may come in the form of unemployment. How can we do more to provide jobs? Darkness may come in the form of incarceration. How successful are our efforts at rehabilitation? And what are the current rates of recidivism in our correctional facilities? We thank God for the latest graduation exercise there. Pray that many more will be blessed. How can we shine our light more effectively, the Christ light within us? How can we work together to reverse some of the current downward trends? How can we combat sin and evil? This is why a Savior was sent to be born in this Christmas season. Let our prayer life be one of quiet meditation in the presence of the Lord, to receive from God the wisdom we need. And so let us go to the throne in prayer. Lord our God, we want to love you with all of our hearts, souls, minds, and strength. We want to love our neighbors as ourselves, and we want to love ourselves in a more healthy manner. Help us to accept this weighty responsibility of being your salt and light wherever we are, at home, at work, in the neighborhood, in our various civic groups and churches, and here in this house of assembly. May you receive all honor, glory, and praise from whatever we do well. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Dr. Hubert Minnis, Peter Turnquest, Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Brandon Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Stan, Marvin James, Frankie Campbell, Dionisio Diagula, Michael Pinsard, Darren Henfield, Ramal Ferreira, Lanisha Rule, Brenzel Rule, Elton Johnson, Philip Davis, Vaughn Miller, Patricia Parker Edson, Hiram Lewis, Carlton Bole, James Aubrey, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Heinz Johnson, Mark Humes, Michael Cook, Miriam Refi Emmanuel, Reese Shipman, Ruben Rami, Ricky Mackey, Cannondon Cartwright, Charnel Ferguson, Glenn Martin, Tyso Forbes, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members, and welcome to the final sitting of this honorable house for the year 2018. I want to begin by recognizing a very special person in my life who happens to be joining us in the gallery, my wife of 39 years. And I'm reminded that she is my better half. So I don't know what is left for me. Honorable members, I also want to remind you that the member statements section would be shortened today because ZNS is still awaiting a number of us to address and make the Christmas messages. The deadline is Friday this week for your annual Christmas messages. And also, when we break for lunch today, we'll all assemble at the Hilton for the annual Parliamentary luncheon, and I invite all of you to attend. Buses will be provided so that we can all move together in unity and in strength when we adjourn for the luncheon break and for the final sitting of 2018. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Register Stock Act, Chapter 362, Bahamas Register Stock Directions 2018, Bahamas Register Stock 2021, 2023, 2025, 2028, 2038, and 2048.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document will lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Honorable member for Centerville, I think you are a little premature in your rising. This is the laying of documents by ministers.
Not a minister yet. No, you're not a minister yet.
Honorable member, you're seeking to rise on a point of privilege. Can you state the point?
The, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to find out in accordance with section 39(2) of the rules book, and this being the second Wednesday in the month, are we following, which order of business are we following?
Not the appropriate time. Not the appropriate time on the agenda.
39(2).
Honorable member. Honorable members, the member is raising the issue of Rule 39(2). And as it indicates in Rule 39(2), unless the House determines otherwise, the House shall proceed to following business on the second Wednesday in each month, provided the House is sitting during that month. And then it lays out the order of business for the second Wednesday. So the rules states that unless the House determines otherwise.
Right.
So at this time, we will have the House make a determination.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On which
That's what that's
order of business will be followed at this time. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, as you rightfully pointed out the rules of the House, I'm going to move that the House continues with the normal agenda, and as you rightfully pointed out, unless the House considers otherwise, and so I do move that the House of Assembly continues with the normal order of business. Not for the second Wednesday, but the normal order of business that would be undertaken at all other sittings in the House other than the second Wednesday.
A second. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House proceed under the normal order of business, which is laid out in Rule 39, subsection 1. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The motion is carried. The business of the House will proceed in accordance with the order of business as laid out in Rule 39.1. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you would note, I thought you may have alluded to that, that I did write to you formally about the same matter.
Yes.
I intend to respond to you, but having regard to what just occurred, it seems that writing may not be necessary anymore. Once it is appreciated that on the second Wednesday of each month, we are allowed, the House have to resolve to revert to the ordinary order of business other than the question time.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Justice.
We are, honorable members, we are laying of documents by ministers, further laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Thank you. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. With respect to messages from the Senate, the chair wishes to notify the House that the chair is in receipt of messages 15 through 20 from the Senate. Presentations of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Honorable members, the chair is speaking. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Honorable members. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, before I start, I'd like to extend condolences to the Maynard family, Allison in particular. Her mother has passed away, and I think the burial is sometime this evening. We all know that Allison has served as minister in the former government and has made great contributions to the advancement of government in this country. And on behalf of my family and the entire government, I extend condolences to Allison and the entire Maynard family. I also, Mr. Speaker, would like to extend Christmas greetings. And I would be very brief, as I would like all members, extend a formal Christmas greeting to the nation very soon. But I'd like to extend Christmas greetings to my constituency, Galani, and the Bahamas at large. And I want to give notice that I will be participating this Christmas with many of the family islands events that are occurring during the Christmas season. And I want to inform this Honorable House and those in the family islands who are listening that on Monday, the 17th of December, I will participate in the events being held in Crooked Island, 11 to 1 p.m. on Monday, the 17th of December. I will also be participating in the event from Auckland at 1:30 to 3:30 p.m., after which I will travel to Mayaguana to participate in the events there at 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Mr. Speaker, at that time I will wish them all, on behalf of myself and the government, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. On Wednesday the 19th, at 2 p.m., I will be traveling to Exuma to do the same in Exuma on Wednesday the 19th. On Thursday the 20th, I will participate in Harbour Islands event, wishing them again Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. That would be at 2 p.m. on Thursday the 20th of December, Harbour Island. And on Friday, the 21st of December, at 12 noon, I would commence in South Andros, Congo Town, after which I will travel to Mangrove Key, followed by Central Andros, and finally North Andros to do the same, Mr. Speaker. And on Saturday, the 22nd of December, at 12 noon, I will travel to the Berry Islands, and at 3:30, I would travel to San Salvador. And Inagua does not feel that they are being left out. Inagua I will travel to sometime in January, so a date to be arranged, Speaker. Now, I knew you would ask about Cat Island, but Cat Island would be included in January. As I know I had not been to Cat Island, and they may want me there for a long time, especially, it's difficult to move you, you know. So I have to spend a lot of time there. So I would say it's very difficult. I don't have to spend much time in Exuma. But, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak on the proposed amendments to the Business License Act and the related business license regulations. As you would recall, Mr. Speaker, the Parliament approved a range of amendments during the recent budget exercise. The aims of which were to provide an enhanced level of oversight on certain matters, while at the same time ensuring that the government advances its ease of doing business initiative to make it easier for persons to get into business and at the same time to stay into businesses. The most significant adjustment we are proposing is to roll back the planned amendments to the recently passed business license regulation that would have required audited financials and bank statements. We have determined, Mr. Speaker, that given where we are and the likely need for further reform of the tax system, in light of the recently debated legislation around our offshore sector, we will defer these and other planned changes to the reporting regime until such is considered in the broader tax reform effort. This will mean, Mr. Speaker, that we shall revert to the status quo before July of this year, which required businesses with turnover of $100,000 or greater to submit with their renewal application a certified statement of attestation, verification that is, signed by a licensed member of BICA. This will ease the concerns raised to me by any member of businesses, particularly small businesses. Mr. Speaker, this is extremely important because we have listened to accountants in the small business sector, and it will assist them. And at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind those in businesses that we have removed business license fees for those businesses $100,000 or less. So beginning January, those whose businesses gross $100,000 or less will not be required to pay any business license fees. They are exempt. However, they are still required to go through the process of being licensed. Mr. Speaker, this is important because in the past, those individuals were charged $100, and it was very difficult for many of them. They would have paid $100 for business license, would not have gotten their business established in terms of generating any funds, and 2-3 years later, they want to restart, and they're required now to pay all back fee. And if they had problems meeting $100, imagine the difficulty they have meeting $300-400 because their business is closed. But we are a party that looks after and takes those individuals into consideration. That's why it's essential that we exempt them so that they may commence their businesses. But I also want to remind them, Mr. Speaker, that those individuals within the inner city, the Bain and Grantstown and portions of Centerville, that is those whose southern boundaries, Wolf Road, whose northern boundaries, Delancey Street, whose western boundaries, Nassau Street, the eastern boundaries, Collins Wall, those individuals are exempted under the new Inner City Incentive, Inner City Act. Those individuals are exempted totally from business license, and therefore I urge them to report to the Ministry of Finance so that that can be resolved, but they are not to pay any business license. As a part of the Inner City program, they are exempted. And they are also, that area, Mr. Speaker, is also exempted from real property tax. So I want to remind the businesses in those areas that they are not to pay any real property tax. Under the new law, they are exempted. And that law will soon be extended, Mr. Speaker, to St. Barnabas, that those individuals will likewise be exempted from business license. After which we would extend it to Angliston, where they too will be exempted, and sectors. Part of your boundaries may be included in the next tranche. Part of your, after which portions of Camp Road, Mr. Speaker, will likewise be exempted. Portions of Fox Hill, Rock Crusher, and of course, Gambia. I'm still trying to convince my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, that as I live on the boundaries of Gambia, I think I deserve some privilege to cut me into Gambia, so that I too may benefit. But, Mr. Speaker, the exemption of business license for those individuals revenue stream of $100,000 or less is very important, as we know that comprise 80% of the businesses within the Bahamas. 80% of the businesses within the Bahamas falls within that category, as only 20% generate more than $100,000. And Mr. Speaker, it's significant to note that out of that 20%, there are only 24 large businesses in this country that contribute to over 50% of the revenue generated by business license for this government. But we are a caring government, Mr. Speaker, and that 80% are blessed, as they will not be required to pay any business license. Mr. Speaker, I wish to advise, though, that notwithstanding this revision, the Department of Inland Revenue has been tasked to increase their vigilance and audit activities to discourage fraudulent statements. And we expect all businesses to file honest, accurate statements, as most reportedly do already. Therefore, I advise all businesses, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the information given is correct and politics will not play a part in these audits. Mr. Speaker, just as importantly, these final set of amendments reaffirm our commitment to making it easier for Bahamians to do business in their own country. To point out one of the key elements, the amendment in paragraph 4 now means that persons filing for a renewal of a business license does not have to go through the full process of obtaining the regulatory approvals once again from all of the regulators. Before, the government had used the business license unit as the enforcement arm for all regulators. But that simply is not best. It is not the best practice, Mr. Speaker, and it served only to frustrate the businesses and the business license process. Thus, this move means that business license unit will do its job, which is to license businesses. The regulators, on the other hand, will provide the business license unit with information it has on delinquent licensees before the licensing period, or be required themselves to address the businesses otherwise within the parameters of the law. But the business license unit, Mr. Speaker, will no longer serve as the de facto policemen for these other agencies. They will have to fulfill their own obligations as it should be. Mr. Speaker, as businesses go into license their business in the new year, they will face prompter service and less government bureaucracy. The Department of Inland Revenue is committed to ensuring that businesses feel the difference this year coming. The processes have been streamlined, and the department is instituting a game plan to ensure that it can address businesses promptly and reduce the time to get a business license renewal. The provisions that were approved already in June to allow for new businesses to get a provisional license will come on stream early 2019. That means that for the most simple and straightforward businesses, you will be able to get a provisional license to begin operation for up to 90 days once you have submitted a completed application. So once you, as an entrepreneur, have done your part to submit all your paperwork, you can begin to operate legally and lawfully. Mr. Speaker, we are about to make it easier for Bahamians to do business, and these amendments, coupled with the provisions already in the law, will cause Bahamians to actually witness firsthand how much easier the government is making it for them to start a business and stay in business. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, as I move the amendment of this and regulation, this particular act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
When the bill was presented, Adelaide was left off. Adelaide is the oldest of the heritage villages, and the member from Kalani did say that Adelaide would be added to it. But Adelaide was not mentioned just now.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
I think you're talking about in the city. We made a commitment that we will look at different areas that we believe are impoverished. There may be segments in the south that are impoverished. There may be segments in the west, and Adelaide may fall on that, within that category. But we will survey the entire New Providence and look at what we deem impoverished areas so that we can give them a jump start to declare them tax-free so that they would not pay business license, real property tax, and able to bring in their materials duty-free, etc. But that applies to all impoverished areas. We are a government of the poor.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
No, Adelaide, good. I didn't call Montreal. I accept. But we won't leave out Adelaide.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a contribution and to second the Business License Amendment Act 2018. 2018. Mr. Speaker, I too would like to add my condolences to the Maynard family on the passing of Lady Maynard, as well as to extend condolences to one of my aides, Sergeant Kevin Moss, who lost his father this morning. And we want to certainly express to the Moss family our sincere condolences during this very difficult time. Mr. Speaker, I too would like to extend the season's greetings to the residents of East Grand Bahama. Certainly thank them for their contributions and support over the last year. The Christmas party will be on the 20th, and details, I'm sure, has already been communicated through my office. But Mr. Speaker, today, I want to, before I just discuss the bill real quick, I just want to note the staff report, IMF staff report that was issued on earlier this week, which gave the government encouragement that we are in fact on the right path with respect to our fiscal consolidation and to the measures, fiscal measures that we have taken since coming to office. The most significant of which, Mr. Speaker, is the introduction of the fiscal responsibility legislation, which provides the guidelines and puts the discipline in the management of the fiscal affairs of the country to help us to reverse years of, I don't want to say mismanagement because that would be incorrect, but years of issues that we have had in respect to how we govern ourselves and how we manage the fiscal affairs of the country that has led to where we are today. Mr. Speaker, this is obviously very important as we enter into this new year and into this new state of affairs. As you know, around the world, there are a number of countries that are in upheaval. There is, some suggest, recession in our future. And as they say in the Bible, while you have the opportunity to store up treasures for those hard times, now is the time for us to ensure that we put in place the discipline to reverse our situation so that in the event that the eventual hard times do come, and they will come, that we are in a better position, that we have the fiscal headroom necessary in order to overcome and to ride out those times. And so while we take no pats on the back as people tend to want to ascribe to us, we do note and we do take as a sign of encouragement that we are in fact moving in the right direction, and we will continue to be disciplined, continue to be focused, and continue to be innovative and creative about the way that we manage the fiscal affairs of the country, and we bring new programs to the table to help create the sustainable growth that we need in order to help us to achieve our ultimate goal of a recurrent surplus in the years to come. So I just want to acknowledge the hard work that the Ministry of Finance and the staff of the Ministry of Finance has put in over the last year. These results that we have are not singular results. It is the result of hard work by a team of dedicated people, working hard, sometimes taking very, very difficult decisions, and it's bearing fruit. And so I want to encourage them and thank them for their selfless sacrifice on behalf of the country. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the positive results with respect to, or the positive acceptance of the fiscal responsibility legislation, there's also a positive comment with respect to the establishment of the Disaster Relief Fund, another critical area that rises its head whenever we have a review by the IMF or the rating agencies and all the rest of them as it relates to our exposure to natural disaster. It is an uncontrollable risk, unfortunately, as climate change, whether you believe it or not, occurs. And the best that we can do is to ensure that we build resilience into our infrastructure, as well as we provide the contingencies such that in the event that we do have a disaster, that there is funding set aside such that we don't have to go out and rush to borrow money at unacceptable or some may say extortionary rates. And so very much, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we debate one of the resolutions that was put last week. Again, a tool that we are invoking in order to ensure that we have some protection and sustainability in the event of a, I am not debating a future resolution, but anyway, as we go forward. Mr. Speaker, lastly, the Prime Minister foreshadowed the ease of doing business. We are, in the ministry and its agencies, engaging in a thorough review of our processes and procedures at the Department of Inland Revenue. As the Prime Minister indicated, we are making business license, in particular, easier to obtain by initially introducing this provisional license, which means that on the application for those classes of business that do not require specialized or specific investigations and approvals, we can get you into business pretty much within 48 hours. The idea being that the Business License Department is not the agency of no. We are the agency of yes. We want to put people into business. That is our function. And so I have given the charge to them that unless there is a particular issue that we are to give the license, we will worry about the background issues afterwards. But we want to facilitate Bahamians getting into business and helping us to grow this economy. And so the motto for next year is, yes, we are the agency of yes, and we will make it happen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has pretty much very well outlined what we are intending by this amendment, and it is simply to address an issue that was raised by the accounting community and by the business community in respect to the requirements, the verification requirements that were included in the 2018-19 budget amendment. It is not our intention to make business difficult or costly. It is our intention to simplify and to make the whole process of administering the business license process efficient. We raised roughly $150 million from the business license process. And it has become a significant aspect of our revenue generating activities. And the idea or the position is simply that we want to encourage accurate reporting. That was the simple intent of the amendment. We recognize that there is some practical challenges, in particular respect to obtaining bank financial statements and complications that may result of commingling of personal and business activity. I want to state just for persons out there that are involved in business that it is imperative, whether it is a statutory requirement or not, that you maintain proper accounting records, whether you're required to file them or not. It is just basic good business practice. And Mr. Speaker, it is not difficult anymore to accomplish that. Simple QuickBooks accounting that really with an hour or two of tutorial, which you can even do online, you can set up a basic set of books to manage your business. This is important not only for business licensing purposes, but it's important for record keeping, so you know what's happening in your business, that you can track where your expenses are, where your revenue is coming from, to see where there's gaps. Maybe you can earn new streams of revenue by introducing new products or new services. You can look at the expenses and see where your expenses are out of line, and maybe you can focus on cutting some of the expenses. You need proper records so that you know where you're going, that you can make the corrections during the year and help to maximize your profit potential. So this is more than just a regulatory aspect. There's a practical business aspect to this. And it is never a good idea for any business to commingle its personal money with its business money. That is a sure way to bankruptcy. That mom and pop thinking that what's in the register is money that we can spend. That's not the way it is. You should keep your personal money, pay yourself from the business by all means, but keep that money in a separate account from your business finances. That is one of the issues that was raised in respect to this being able to provide bank statements. And Mr. Speaker, again, we are doing away with it, but I want to just advise that we are in a changing world, and the requirements to do business are changing and evolving. And as a result of all of the matters that are coming before us, I can foreshadow that statutory accounts are going to be required at some point, and not just here, all over the world. And so for those businesses who are not keeping proper records, I would suggest it's a good thing to do. And as I outlined before, it's got nothing to do with the regulatory filings at this point. It's just good business practice. Mr. Speaker, in the BICA, the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants guidance notes, it speaks to what is certified by a person who is a qualified accountant, meaning a licensee, a licensed practitioner of the Bahamas Institute of Chartered Accountants. And it speaks to, the certification aspect speaks to conducting a review engagement under the independent standards for review engagements. So it is prescribed. It's not an audit. It's not intended to be an invasive process. It's to review the information to ensure that it is presented in a proper manner, that it is reasonable information that is being put forth. The onus is on the owner to present accurate information. And the accountant will only review the information to make sure that it is properly presented and that it is reasonable. The other point that was raised in respect to the turnover, what constitutes turnover. And again, in the Bahamas, we adopt international accounting standards and reporting on the international financial reporting standards. That is the standard that we use and we expect to be complied with in respect to reporting for purposes of business license. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I do second this bill in an effort to reduce the complexity of obtaining a business license renewal in the upcoming year. And again, through the Department of Inland Revenue, we'll be introducing further initiatives to even further simplify and improve the ease of doing business going forward into the new year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Business License Act. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise briefly today on behalf of the people of Exuma, Ragged Island, and the magnificent 365 Exuma Keys to make a presentation on this business license amendment. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, I offer condolences to the family of Lady Zoe Maynard and thank the family and her specifically for service to our fine country. Oftentimes we forget the sacrifices that spouses make when the other half do public service, and therefore it's important that we always recognize them as well for their service. Mr. Speaker, it is always a pleasure to rise in this House, the bedrock of democracy, no matter what the issue might be. That we can be here as the people's representatives to give voice to their concerns, to aid those in need, and to bring clarity to often complex subjects is more than a duty. It's an esteemed honor. And so let me say today that it is my honor to point out to this wayward, stubborn government the error of its ways as it now scrambles to undo what many, many people told them should have never been done in the first place. It is an honor for me to speak here today, but for the other side, Mr. Speaker, I struggle to identify the honor in wasting people's time. I will be brief on that note, Mr. Speaker, and we will support the bill. But you know, it was just last week that two members opposite, including our esteemed Minister of Finance, took great umbrage as I explained to them that in my view, the downfall of this administration will be its failure to consult. The failure apparent today was also apparent on Monday when the Attorney General, whom I suggested members opposite consulted, delayed for a week the non-profit organization bill due to concerns raised by the church and civil society. and in his words, so that they might consult. Some might find that strange, however, I don't. One would think one would get tired of telling this government, I told you so. But one does not. Because again, I did tell you. And again, you did not listen. And again, you end up looking like you don't know what you're doing, because somewhere in your heads you could not fathom that grown men and women who have invested lifetimes in many of these businesses have their own good senses to know what is good or bad for their business and their interest. This was the case with the nonprofit bill, the case with the gaming tax, and now it's the case with the business license issue before us. Try to spin it any way you want. What it is, it's clear on the face of it. This administration has egg on your face, and you seek to clean it up before any real damage is done. And it's because you did not listen to the business community, like you didn't listen to the business community on VAT. Now you struggle to meet your projected targets. You did not listen to the Christian Council and the nonprofits. Now you seek to rush their participation in the revamp bill before the end of the year. You did not listen to us on Grand Lucayan. Now here we are, using the people's tax dollars to fix up the hotel to make it somewhat attractive to investors. Here we are, settling with government money, severance costs for those employed for years by a private business, all because you negotiated poorly on behalf of the Bahamian people. They call that fattening frog for snake, where I come from in Forbes, the Lexoma. Fattening frog for snake is what you did. And of course, you did not listen to the business community on your ill thought out plan to make it harder for businesses to do business. Isn't it hard enough already? Tax upon tax, bureaucracy upon bureaucracy upon bureaucracy. This is how the F&M does business, with brute force, no finesse, steeped in the errant belief in its own righteousness, in its own rightness. The original amendments were passed without any deep discourse or thorough explanations by the minister himself. I remind this House that the opposition voted against your budget and your VAT increase, I might note. They would have required, these bills before being amended today would have required companies with an annual turnover of $10 million or more to provide audited financials on a yearly basis. Those businesses earning between $1 and $10 million would have had to provide a financial statement along with a certified bank statement covering each bank account in the business name and any other account it used in transactions. Perhaps it is non-productive to drill too deeply into that for the moment, perhaps, because we're here today to backtrack on those bills. Particularly, I wonder why we let businesses sweat since June, only to repeal this week before the information would have been due. Tell me, where was the green paper on this? Where was the consultation? I'm a businessman and I didn't see it. Are businesses just a plaything to poke at and test theories on without consulting those who built them with their own blood, sweat, and tears? Certainly, we think not. The word that comes to mind in the midst of this all is overkill, something I hear a lot in business conversations across the country about this government nowadays. Had you consulted BICA, they would have suggested to you that you could use the VAT filings to reconcile it with turnover. They would have told you then that a full audit with notes was overkill. Had you consulted the various regulators, they would have told you that the time frame for performance of the audit for business license was inconsistent with established regulatory filing guidelines. Had you consulted businesses generally, they would have told you that the filing requirements, the deadlines, were too tight. Had you consulted the clearing banks, they would tell you that for privacy and other reasons, it was inappropriate to insert banks into clients' tax matters. That the concept of a certified bank statement is awkward. They would have told you that bank statements themselves were not ideal in determining turnover, since they would include many investing and loans and financing types of activities. Besides, someone would have told you that not all turnover may be deposited. Had you consulted the Chamber of Commerce, they would tell you to stop adding bureaucracy and stop paying lip service to ease of doing business and implement meaningful tactics and strategies to make inroads on this. It would be interesting to see the paper, the recommendations from your Ease of Business committee, and it would be helpful to see a checklist as to which of those recommendations were accepted. Your committee, your Ease of Business committee. With respect to filing all of this information, tell me who would protect such volumes of data? Who would be allowed to see it, and where would it be shared? What would you hope to glean from such delicate study of what businesses do with their banks, what assets they possess? Was this some backdoor way of trying to figure out how viable a corporate tax or income tax would be in the Bahamas? I wonder. I thought surely the good minister said the government was using the people's money to pay a large accounting firm to explore the viability of that. I look forward to that report being laid on the table with the kind of transparency this government likes to boast about. Perhaps he would also be kind to provide this House with detailed results of those studies, as I have mentioned. Or at the very least, give us an update on how it's progressing. Mr. Speaker, if the government wants to change the business license regime, which frankly is in need of reform, though not in this way, then it should do it in an open, transparent manner with all stakeholders involved. Full and meaningful consultation. Full and meaningful consultation. You know, like when the PLP implemented BAT, this was clear in the way the PLP implemented BAT, which this government ignored. Perhaps instead of tinkering with so much things in such short time, where there's not a complete understanding of how these things work, this administration should seek to grow the economy. As I suggest almost every time I stand up, focus on economic growth. Nominal growth won't do it. We need dynamic growth. An economy firing on all cylinders, the kind of growth we're seeing now as a result of Bahama. The resort, they said, had a fake owner and a fake opening. Now they rave about the GDP growth and the increase in stopover visitors. So somewhere in the middle of all of the chest beating, Mr. Speaker, let's remember to thank God for Bahama. And thank God that the PLP ensured that the property was open before they left office. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Focus on economic growth. Meet with foreign investors. Shepherd those projects in the pipeline, shepherd them out of the pipeline. Encourage the revitalization of Bay Street. Meet with domestic investors and encourage them to invest in our economy. Stop meandering, wasting more and more of the people's time, going back on things that should have never done, that you ought to have known better before. And you would have known better had you consulted. So yeah, we support the bill. We do. If you find your good sense and you want to reverse Oban, we'll support that too. If you find your good conscience and you want to roll back this new VAT rate, we will support that amendment too. It was also ill-conceived, and it's inflicting untold pain and suffering on the Bahamian people. If you decide to do something good for the poor and the middle class, we'll support you in that as well. Mr. Speaker, I promise to be brief, and therefore I rest. And I thank the people of Exuma, Ragged Island, and the Exuma Keys.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to speak briefly to support this bill being presented this morning, let me first take this opportunity to wish everybody in the great constituency of Elizabeth a very Merry Christmas, and we look forward to a safe holiday season. Mr. Speaker, I had not intended to speak at all to this because it seemed like a straightforward thing, but as is always the case, the side opposite generally will make a mess out of any simple proposition put before them. What we see here this morning, Mr. Speaker, is what I call historical revisionism. And when the question is asked, who has the moral authority, who has the fiscal authority to speak to financial matters, you would think that the side opposite would sit small and shut up. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we look at the historical performance of the economy of the Bahamas from 2012 to 2017, you will see that in 2012, the GDP growth of the Bahamas was recorded at 3.1%. The second year of their term in office, growth was negative 0.6%.
Down.
The year after that, it was negative 1.2%.
Down.
The year after that, it was negative 3.1%.
Down.
The year after that, it was 0.2%, Mr. Speaker. Only subsequent to the Free National Movement government returning to office did we see any restoration of GDP growth.
Honourable members. Honourable members.
Mr. Speaker.
Member for Elizabeth is on his feet.
The side opposite can boast, but they will choose not to boast about driving up our debt to GDP to the highest level ever in the history of the Bahamas. The highest ever in the history of the Bahamas. 67.8%, Mr. Speaker. The side opposite can boast of making it so difficult to do business in the Bahamas that even in 2017 we were ranked 121 out of 190 countries. And so, Mr. Speaker, the historical revisionists that would love to separate themselves from their performance, and I noticed that the leader from Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador has been going on a tour, and he's been talking to the people as if he did not participate in the last administration, but he did. They should take responsibility for the damage that they've done. And Mr. Speaker, as we attempt, as Kalani, as East Grand Bahama attempts to bring this ship of state back on an even keel, Mr. Speaker, have them support the efforts that are being made. Have them claim the damage that they've done. Have them acknowledge the painful wounds that they've inflicted on this great country.
Honourable member for Elizabeth.
This is a Melbourne House. Let's all be quiet. The speaker's on the street, gentlemen.
Honourable members, as we approach this Christmas recess, Honorable members, I would not want to invoke Rule 88 on any of you before we go into 2019. Now, the member is on his feet, and if you don't want to eat what you are serving, then I want you to desist from your disruptive behavior, because I try to make certain that every member has equal privilege in representing his constituents in this honorable place. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am about to take my seat. Mr. Speaker, the truth shall set you free. And one of the things that I like to say over and over is that sometimes people prefer to believe a simple lie than a complex truth. Mr. Speaker, the side opposite knows the truth. They simply don't want to claim it. The side opposite understands their dismal performance in the last 5 years. But they would like to say to the public that they are a new body now, that none of them had anything to do with it. None of them had anything to do with it. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say to the people of the Bahamas that we are going to manage this economy with great care for the small businessman, to make it easier to do business, and to continue to stimulate growth in our economy. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am privileged to rise on behalf of the people of Angliston who have an interest in this, particularly those with small businesses. And Speaker, before I do, I wanted to begin by also extending condolences to our former colleague, or our colleague, Alison Maynard Gibson, and her siblings and her entire family on the loss of their mother, Lady Zoe Maynard. And anyone who knows the history of our country will know that her life was inextricably, that is the life of Lady Zoe Maynard, linked to the important moments in our history alongside her husband, Sir Clement Maynard. And we are very sorry for her loss, and we pray God's strength to her family on the loss of that matriarch to that family. Also, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to remark that today, I see the Bahamas Archives, Department of Archives, is noting that on this day in Bahamian history, the constitutional talks began in London. The Constitutional Conference took place at Marlborough House in London from the 12th to the 20th of December 1972. The Independence Constitution was signed on the 20th of December 1972. Full independence came on the 10th of July 1973. The negotiations, and this is a note from the Department of Archives, the negotiations were a demonstration of Bahamians of differing political persuasions and allegiances, working harmoniously together to bring about a document that would forever be the basis of the rule and direction of a new Bahamas. The signatories of the Bahamian Constitution included Lyndon Pindling, Kendall Isaacs, Arthur Folks, Arthur D. Hanna, Orville Turnquest, Paul L. Adderley, A. Loftus Roker, George A. Smith, Philip M. Bethel, Milo Butler, Clement Maynard, Carlton E. Francis, Cadwell M. Brister, Henry J. Bowen, and Norman S. Solomon. I thought it was important for us to note that important anniversary in our history, and the notation that it was a bipartisan collaboration which went to the United Kingdom and joined in that historic moment in our history. Mr. Speaker, I heard the member for Elizabeth, the Minister of Health, who oftentimes, thank you very much, who oftentimes finds great vigor and energy to speak on political matters, particularly he's talking about the PLP. And I want to remark or bemoan that we would like to see that same level of vigor and energy to address and redress the serious conditions that are being faced in the Public Hospital Authority as we speak. And perhaps the minister has not been there recently, and he needs to. I'm going to invite him to take a walk to the Princess Margaret Hospital and the RAN, and to see firsthand the dilemma that Bahamians are facing in our public health care system. I'm being reminded by Exuma that I'm inviting him to speak to the nurses. I think that they've had a strike vote, I think in the papers today, saying that there seems to be a lack of cooperation by the agency responsible for facilitating fair labor relations in this country. They are suggesting that there is a lack of cooperation or manipulation of a process. And I want to invite the government to not to be seen there, because then you make the debate something else. It's no longer the nurses. It becomes a larger, wider issue that I invite every union to pay attention to. We cannot allow or countenance that type of conduct. Now, I also heard the member for Elizabeth speaking about the abysmal state of the economy, and the PLP is so this and so that, and the FNM is so this and so that. And he spoke about the improvements in the economy, and I want to remind the government, well, the government didn't say this, only the member for Elizabeth, who's the Minister of Health. He said this. I want to remind him that the initiatives that he met in play for ease of doing business, the same ease of doing business he's now saying has improved so greatly, that the foundational steps and foundation and movements were put in place by the Progressive Liberal Party. And those are the steps for customs modernization. I know the member for Elizabeth will remember that. The public financial management reform with the Inter-American Development Bank. I know the member will remember that. The digitalization, the Inland Revenue Department. I know the member will remember that. And all of those, and the ability to make business license applications online. I know the member will remember that. So when you come in here to misrepresent the historic facts and the continuing journey of governance, you will be challenged. You will be challenged. You will be challenged. And then, you know, the member, Mr. Speaker, the member spoke about hurricanes. And well, he spoke about, well, the member for East Grand Bahama spoke about hurricanes. And I feel as if I am almost in a twilight zone. Because when this administration took office in May of 2017, in that speech, the budget speech, the technical people put in that speech that the hurricanes faced by this Commonwealth was significant contributors to the dilemma we found ourselves in economically. And this administration and that member sought to minimize the impact of 3 major hurricanes in this country, including one that hit the center of population.
The chair recognizes the honorable member, East Grand Bahama, on a point of order.
Yeah, the member is misleading. In characterizing my contribution on the matter of the hurricanes as being, what's the word you use? Minimalized. Never, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is what I did criticize, and I continue to criticize and stand on, is the handling and the management of that disaster has contributed to significant debt in this country, and they left behind people. No, I'm on a point of order. I've not finished my point of order. I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
Honorable member, the member of the floor.
No, you can make whatever speech you want. But what you cannot do is to impute motive to me. Stand on the facts. $150 million was borrowed by the previous government. And today, Bahamians still have tarps on their roof. Many of us have had to dip into our pockets to help people. And so the member should not be confused about and try to mislead the Bahamian people on what my position is in respect to the hurricanes. We all know there was an economic impact. The question is, was the management of that disaster and was the response handled appropriately? And what has been put forth, Mr. Speaker, as a contingency and as a mitigation is this loan that is being proposed that we will debate at a future date. So it is inappropriate for the former minister who was involved in that government to stand here and try to rewrite that piece of history, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, I heard the member, and I also heard his innuendo about some involvement. This member came to this House and sought to minimize the impact of hurricanes. And if this member wants to talk about... No, Mr. Speaker, no, Mr. Speaker. That is my opinion. That is my opinion. That is my opinion. You sought to minimize. Speaker, it's my opinion. It's my opinion. It's my opinion. That's okay. I have an opinion. That's my opinion, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members. Honourable members.
Well, I'm speaking.
The decision rests with the chair on whether or not words being used are inappropriate or abusive, or whether or not.
My opinion. As a member of this House, that's my opinion.
The member is trying to ascribe a motive and statements to me that I have not given, Mr. Speaker. It is impure. She is ascribing an impure motive, Mr. Speaker, and it is an injury to my privilege. And I request that she remove it, Mr. Speaker, because you can't say that my opinion of you and get away with that. That is inappropriate. It is not honorable, Mr. Speaker. It is not honorable. And I humbly request that she remove that, and the member for Angliston, the member for Angliston can say whatever she wants about that matter, but she cannot ascribe any impure motive to any contribution that I would have made. The record is clear with what I would have said, and she should stick to that. And the member, should stick to that.
Honourable member for Angliston.
I can't have an opinion, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, sorry.
The member is refuting the intent that you are implying that was his intention. No, but you cannot imply an improper motive or intent.
I'm not withdrawing it, Mr. Speaker. I'm not withdrawing it.
Order that the word minimalize be expunged from the record.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, it's my opinion, Mr. Speaker, that this member, in his speech, his first budget speech to this Parliament, in my opinion, because I heard it and I sat in here, and I am entitled to an opinion as a freely elected member of this House, that he did not give due weight to the impact of the hurricane. And the point, the language you've expunged it, no problem, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, see, that is much better. It could raise the same thought, but without imputing a motive.
Well, I mean, if the Speaker, if you find that more acceptable, then that's fine with me, Mr. Speaker. But the member spoke about management of a hurricane. I'm surprised he could sit across from the member for Ragged Island. I mean, you're talking about management? You've done nothing. What have you done for Ragged Island? You're talking about management? The people of Ragged Island and their descendants, the Munros, the Lockharts, the Curlings, I hope they're listening and watching. Because you criticize an administration who tried to do something when the center of this country, where the population lies, was hit, and tried their best to deal with the circumstances, imperfect as it may have been or may not have been. You've done nothing, and you come and talk about management? And you know, Speaker, they came in here and they talk about CRIP. They talk about CRIP. What's the thing then, CRIP? The CRIP. They criticized us for not keeping up the CRIF and all this thing. It was supposed to be this great safety net for us in the time of storms. Now we see the Prime Minister rushing to Washington, come in here borrowing money from IDB, took the money from the dormant account, put it there. I mean, what is it? What is it? I think the point that we're making, and this is the point Exuma made on Ragged Island, Exuma and the Keys in Ragged Island, is that you are being inconsistent, disingenuous in your rationale and your rationalizations that you brought to this House.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama on a point of order.
The member is again misleading, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is the CRIF insurance is just that. It is an insurance, for which the member might be aware and reminded that we did have a collection or we had a claim on in the last event for the rainfall coverage. Mr. Speaker, the member is also aware that the CRIF insurance policy has been restructured so that we will, in the same circumstances, receive a payout, something that their administration failed to do. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the member mentioned something about a loan from the IDB. Again, she is foreshadowing a debate that we will have in the new year, but again, just to assure the Bahamian people that there is no loan from the Inter-American Development Bank for hurricanes. What we are going to debate at some future point is a contingent loan, a contingent facility, such that in the event that there is a disaster. No, we're not debating it. She raised it. The member from Eglinton raised it in a normal bullying way, and I'm just all I'm doing is explaining what it is that she's saying for completeness. It is a contingent, and it only becomes a loan when you draw down on it, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members.
Yes. The member just described...
Honorable member, yes. I want to say something.
Yes.
It's only a seat. I'm hearing a lot of reference to decisions by the chair with respect to the rules. I can hear it. And it has been my experience that once I can hear it, the public can also hear it on the ZNS broadcast. And I'm very happy that members appear to understand and know the rules, particularly the rule, Rule 3325, that speaks to anticipating a debate, and the rules which speaks to speaking to a matter after the question has been put. Now, that suggests to me that if you are aware of those rules, then when you do it, you are being defiant. And so, I want to make certain that as we proceed, that members who are familiar with the rules abide by the rules. Because, I don't want it to be said that the chair is being biased in any way, when in fact the chair is trying to simply function in accordance with the rules. And since this issue of the rules that we have been burdened with for some time now has been raised again this morning, at this time I intend and I will table a letter from the leader of the opposition dated the 26th of November 2018, written to the Speaker with respect to the notice of opposition question time, oral question, and the letter dated the 30th of November 2018 in response to that letter by the Speaker, so that the record could be clear what the position of the chair is with respect to the rules. And so, in so doing, at this time I table the letter from the Leader of the Opposition dated the 26th of November 2018 and the Speaker's response dated the 30th of November 2018. I get the initial letter. Honorable Member Ferguson, you may continue.
Speaker, the member for, and I was surprised you missed that one, Mr. Speaker. The member for East Grand Bahama used language which suggested I was seeking to bully someone or anyone in this parliament. And Speaker, first of all, I would like that member to withdraw it. And secondly, I'd like to deal with that point first. So I'm asking that member to withdraw that comment. When I speak in here, I speak for the people of Angleton. And I'm asking the member to withdraw it, Mr. Speaker.
I will gladly withdraw the term bully from my characteristic, my characterization of the member. I will just say overly aggressive. Can I say that?
No.
I can't say that either. Oh, was it oratorically? Mr. Speaker, in all seriousness, in the spirit of where we hope to go, I withdraw the word.
Speaker, and a member substituted with language overly aggressive. And okay, but I want to belabor that point though, because there's a view that women are supposed to sit in here and serve tea. I'm not in here to serve tea, Mr. Speaker. I am elected by the men and women, the people of Angleton, and they want me to fight for what they are concerned about. Not to sit in here and to have some polite conversation, which I don't mind, but if it's not appropriate, it won't be happening. And so I want to reiterate, I'm going to sensitize the members of this House, particularly the men, to be very careful with your language when you are confronted by women in this Parliament who express themselves in a strong manner. So, and I invite you to be you see, and here they are now. Here we have tall pines now, Mr. Speaker. Tall pines in the back here, not understanding the issue. I hope the women of tall pines are listening. The men of this Parliament need to be sensitized. In other parliaments, you would never get away with that. Never. And so I'm raising, Speaker, getting back to the point, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, and so the member for Elizabeth, his description of what he meant, what the state of our economy is not accurate. It does not reflect the nuances of the dilemma and challenges faced by the prior administration, and it does not give credit to the steps taken, including, as the member for Exuma and Ragged Island pointed out, the steps taken despite the best efforts of those opposite to put the Bahama Resort project online, which was able to open its doors and hire Bahamians and impact the GDP of this country and lead to higher airlift and record numbers of tourism. Be honest. Don't come with this one-dimensional, trite propaganda. Bahamians are more intelligent than that. If you have an analysis and it's compelling, I stuck with it. But don't come with this, come on, man. This is 2018. The Bahamians are intelligent. And I reject that analysis that you gave, that you gave. And yes, Elizabeth, East Grand Bahama.
Honorable Member Ferguson, the member for Elizabeth. Are you on a point of order?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I read the printed, gazetted GDP growth record of the Bahamas from 2012 to 2016. I hardly find that to be anything that the honorable member described. And so, in the spirit in which we now seem to be proceeding, I would like her to withdraw those negative comments.
Honorable Member, what precisely, Honorable Member for Elizabeth, are you seeking to have withdrawn?
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member chose to use particularly pejorative language.
Like what?
I would simply ask her
like what?
to withdraw the words that she chose to use.
Language, Speaker. I invited the member and those opposite to give a more meaningful analysis. What's pejorative, Speaker? Speaker, and so here we are, and the member for Exuma and Ragged Island, I thought, gave an excellent account of how we got where we are. And the one word he did not use, and the word I will use, is arrogance. Because it is the arrogance of this administration that has us where we are today, and has us where we have been repeatedly, where they have sought in dogmatic fashion to force down the throats of the Bahamian people measures which they've now had to come back and backtrack on. Today is the day of backtracking, Mr. Speaker. And as Exuma said, you waited until the last minute. I hope you ain't give nobody heart attacks in these small businesses. It's so rough out there. You waited until the last minute when you could have given advance notice to the people who would have been infected. But it's just, I guess it's an exercise of power that you could do it like, or maybe it's our Christmas present. Thank you for the Christmas present to the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, on the issue that the Prime Minister spoke about the Over the Hill initiative, and I really want to come to this point, because like the member for Golden Isles raised the point about Adelaide, and we are told that Gambia has been included in the lineup. Yet, just now you said it would come to some consideration. I'm just saying, I'm concerned about the lack of transparency. You know, this administration came to this parliament last week and brought legislation that was mandated / dictated by the European Union, which caused for non-discriminatory tax concessionary measures for Bahamians and non-Bahamians. But here you have now, with the public purse, you are giving concessions to a specific community, which is Bain and Grantstown and Centerville, which I do not object to because I believe they are worthy communities and require resources from the state. But I am trying to understand what is the analysis, what's the criteria? Prime Minister, you said in here today that communities that are, quote, deemed impoverished by who? What is the objective, transparent criteria which determines which communities will get concessions from the taxpayers of this country? You said also that St. Barnabas would be next. What is the rationale? One side of St. Barnabas one side of the Grove is St. Barnabas, one street, the 3rd Street, and the other side is Engliston. How do you rationalize giving a tax benefit to one side, happens to be represented by the Free National Movement, and not according the same benefit and concession from the taxpayers' dollars to the people of Engliston? And people of Engliston are very concerned about this. They're raising it with me all the time, Mr. Speaker, because they are beginning to think that they are being victimized for electing a member of the Progressive Liberal Party to this parliament, and that the taxpayers' dollars are being used for the benefit of those communities that are represented by Free National Movement.
Honourable member, the chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama on a point of order.
No, Mr. Speaker, if the member would just would like a bit of clarification, because this is not the first time that she's raised this particular issue, and I believe that the Prime Minister has, the member for Kalani, has explained the situation already, and he attempted to. I'm asking for your indulgence in this. If you don't wish, I can sit down. But the point is that we all recognize that we operate within a budget, and that there has to be a planned approach to these development activities. And the position that has been taken by the administration is that we will phase in various areas in the economic zone. It is not an attempt to victimize any particular community or constituency or to grant some favor over one or the other. It is a logical fiscal plan to develop and to assist in development of all of the I guess the word is impoverished communities. I'm not sure what the correct term is. But all of the challenged and vulnerable communities, historical communities, foundation communities that exist in Nassau. So you can't expect it all to be done at once. And I think that is rational. I don't know why we have to keep going back to that, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, the member for Kalani, has indicated over and over that there is a plan with respect to this.
Thank you, Honourable.
Thank you, Speaker. Oh, sorry.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for Pine Ridge on a point of order.
Point of order. Sometimes I wonder if we missed some of the things that I think are more pointed to the Bahamian people. Angleston made a statement, and I was waiting for a point of order, and nobody in the government got up and rise to the fact that Angleston said that last week bills were brought here that was dictated to by the European Union.
Honorable member, on the point of order?
Yes, that's the point of order. The point of order is that's what I heard, and I'm trying to figure out is that's what it is, because I think that's an important point to the Bahamian people.
Mr. Speaker, first off, let me once again, and we're getting off track, Mr. Speaker, so I acknowledge that, but it's not unusual for the member. But Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is, I explained in the debate last week that nobody has dictated anything to the government and the people of the Bahamas. We are a sovereign state, meaning we have the right to determine whatever law we want to impose, whether we want to comply or whether we want to ignore any international standard. But as I indicated then, there is a consequence for the decision that we make. The issue that we are talking about today is absolutely irrelevant to that discussion. This has nothing to do with that, Mr. Speaker. And so again, I know the member's trying to make the news, but he's on the wrong point on this particular issue. Today, we are talking about business license, and we're all over the place, Mr. Speaker. We're all over the place.
Thank you,
But
Honorable.
we've already addressed that issue.
Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angleston.
Speaker, I don't think I have raised any issue that has not been raised by the members opposite. No issue. And so I don't know what the member is saying, Mr. Speaker. Now, the point I'm making is that the other point I want to make is I think the member from, and I keep getting interrupted, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to finish, my presentation so that we can move on. You said we have a festive event coming up afterwards. The other issue, the member for East Grand Bahama spoke about the IMF mission report, or what the note that they made, and basically, I guess, heralding it as a indicator of that the state or the Bahamas is moving in the correct direction. And I don't know the specifics. I'm going to have to study it a lot more. But I do know, though, that a lot has happened since this administration took place. I do not know whether or not these are in accordance with the mandates or the directives of the IMF. I suspect that the IMF are very influential in this administration. They speak to every administration, everyone. And I've heard the discussions over the many years, including under former administrations. But we always know that when they come, that we have a government that, no matter understanding and weighing the issues, understands that their primary interest is to the Bahamian people. I know that we are able to look at some numbers, but we do know that we've had heavy borrowing, we've had firings, we've had increased taxation, reduction in social assistance. Now, if these are being put in the balance of what the IMF says about how good we're doing, then the Bahamian people need to have their own test and measure. Perhaps we need a mission report of the Bahamian people about what is happening in this economy, Mr. Speaker. So I want to just give a perspective on what it is that you are boasting about. Because while, and I made this point in the debate last week, Mr. Speaker, these are the same agencies that allowed in the United States of America an unregulated banking system, which led to a global recession. And they come here, they go on these third world countries, and they go to the developed countries too, but they go and they mandate all these things. They're in Barbados, they're in Jamaica, and of course we know what is happening in those countries. So I want to urge the government, while we are proud, meaning we, meaning you, of the IMF report, that we always remember in the balance that we have to measure, put a measurement, which is the quality of existence of the Bahamian people, and how that is being impacted by the measures taken by this administration, Speaker. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, I believe there's some concern from people of Alukaya. They've not been paid. I wanted the IMF to know we've got some debts out there. The people of Alukaya, the staff have not been given their payouts. and they're very concerned about it, and they've asked me to raise in this Parliament the impact, the fact that this administration has not yet paid out their redundancy payments, and we would like this, that staff are not aware. So if there's something is happening, then there should be some communication, because from what I'm understanding, Speaker, would you assist me, Mr. Speaker? So much noise.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
Now I'm worried.
Could you imagine East Grand Bahama say, I can't say nothing in this Parliament?
Honorable members.
My Lord.
Honorable members, the member for Angerson, permit her to complete.
You know, the member for East Grand Bahama got to work with these credibility issues, with his divergent commentaries on different things. You know, I always remind him, the heat is on you. The heat is on you, Speaker. The bill is speaking about the business license. You talked about the state of our economy. I said the people of Alukaya said they've not gotten their payout monies. And I'm asking the government to account to these people who you said you bought the hotel for to assist, to advise as to what is the
Honorable member, the chair recognizes Honorable Member Sanad.
I can help the member. There is ongoing discussions with the line staff and the management staff at Arlakaya. If that information hasn't been divulged to the people you're talking to, it's not something that's happening in a closet somewhere. It is going between the board and the hotel management unit and between the Ministry of Labor and the line staff. That has been ongoing for some time. Even up to yesterday, we're going backwards and forwards. So I hope that helps.
It helps, except I don't think that I have been informed that information is not trickling down, and so and I've been asked to raise it. Speaker, but I want to go back to what the member for East Grand Bahama said about the over-the-hill initiatives and what the Prime Minister explained over and over. I think the member missed my point. You know, I said there has to be transparency in what the government does. You cannot tell me you can rationalize doing one side of a street and go back, and the other side in a street that's probably about 20 feet wide or 30 feet wide, and ignore that community. You cannot say that is transparent, particularly because you're doing two contiguous communities at this moment. So now the next one, now you can do one community. It's not transparent, Mr. Speaker. It's not transparent, Mr. Speaker. What have are you serious? Mr. Speaker, the East Grand Bahama goes to that place that very few people want to go, man. It's very dark where you like to go. Very dark, Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is not transparent. These are taxpayer dollars. They do not belong to the FNM and to their agenda. Their monies paid in by the Bahamian people. And we would like to know, the people of Angleston would like to know, how you are rationalizing that when you next move forward, you will do one side of 3rd Street and not the other side of 3rd Street. And we are going to, by constituency? Oh, I see. It's by constituency now. I see. Not demographics, not this side of Wolf Road and the next side. We're going by constituency now. No problem, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want the people of Angleston to be wide awake as to what is happening. It is beginning to look like something, and it ain't Christmas. It ain't Christmas. It ain't Christmas. It ain't Christmas, Speaker.
You're gonna let alone like something, but it ain't Christmas.
And so, Mr. Speaker, even with the cleanups going on in these communities, it's being challenged in other communities. These are taxpayer dollars. It is not transparent. It is not transparent, and it cannot be rationalized, Mr. Speaker, and it's not correct to give concessions from the taxpayers' dollars for those who are represented in this government, and then put as a last resort the other side, Mr. Speaker, those who from the other side. See, Mr. Speaker, they are talking about ringing bell and all of this, Mr. Speaker. It's sad, man. It's sad. It's sad. And you know what happens, Mr. Speaker, in the meantime, the Bahamian people get caught in the middle of this, you know. They get caught in the people of Angleston getting caught in the middle of this. You ain't do this. Yes, you do this. You ain't do that. You think the people of Angleston care? You think they care about that? You think they care? Or you think they care? Well, you need to come walk with me to Key West Street. I won't carry you through there, Speaker. Pardon me? Speaker, now the member for East Grand Bahama just asked.
Honorable members. Honorable members. We are drifting off from the matter that is
Look,
before
the
us.
Prime Minister raised this issue.
Honorable members. Please ignore the chatter across the floor and make your contribution.
Speaker, I want to make this point. I will make it clear because the Minister of Finance, who has carriage of the public finances, is making comments across the floor which are not, in my view, acceptable in terms of transparency of the public purse. I am saying that it is not transparent for you to do one side of one street and say it's a constituency that is represented in this administration and ignore the other side of that street. It is not transparent. And I can tell you now, if you think you're going to get away with that without any pushback in this country, you will find out. You will find out. I've been representing Angliston for 4 consecutive terms, and you are punishing Angliston right now. You are punishing Angliston. You are punishing Angliston. You are punishing Angliston.
Honorable members.
They're punishing Angliston, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, they're punishing Angliston. I want Angliston to hear today what this Minister of Finance is saying across the floor. He's trivializing what is happening in this country. You're using the public purse and you're using it only for people who are represented in your organization. It's not fair, Speaker.
Honorable member for Angliston. Honorable member for Angliston. That final comment. That final comment is really imputing improper motive and.
Speaker, I think they have an improper motive. Not him.
Honorable member.
Administration.
I cannot permit that final comment to remain.
Speaker,
I would like you to withdraw it.
Speaker.
The honorable member.
Speaker, you can strike him, Speaker. It is not rational, Mr. Speaker.
Order that the comment from the member for Angliston is unparliamentary. To suggest honorable member for Angliston. Honorable member for, resume your seat. The chair is speaking. The chair is speaking. Order that the statement from the honorable member for Angliston. Honorable members. The chair is speaking. With respect to the comment made by the honorable member for Angliston, that the Minister of Finance and the government is only concerned with taking care of the areas or constituencies represented by the governing party be expunged from the record.
Speaker, I will say this, Speaker, it is not transparent to use, see, this is the same administration that came here last week, after they spent weeks and weeks in Brussels, and brought legislation which says you cannot discriminate between foreign persons and Bahamian nationals in tax concessions and advantages. So I am saying is, if you're using the public treasury for inner city communities and alleviation of suffering and poverty conditions, you cannot rationalize to me how you can do one side of 3rd Street, go back, and not the other side, go back, Speaker. Yeah, you get to it. Speaker, and so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to adopt everything that the member for Exuma has said. He's gone through the list of missteps of this administration. He's shown that they have been rash, that they've not been accountable, and have had to backtrack, and as they are doing here today, coming now at the last minute to redress legislation that they could not have thought through, and they must have understood the burden that would have put on the Bahamian people, and they just came here and just did it without thinking twice. But now apparently now they're thinking 3 times, and they're backtracking. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think that I think that's it, Mr. Speaker. I want to I have 10 minutes. Let me see what else I have 10 minutes. No, Speaker, but I think the last point I want to raise, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad the member for Bamboo Town reminded me. There was a story on the news last night about the post office, about mails being destroyed, purposely destroyed by the Postal Service. I don't know the facts or otherwise of the matter. The minister is here. But I am told that this is, unless it is Family Island mail with no return address. Sorry, I have the actual advice on that. Yes.
Honorable member.
No, that's a note. I have a note, Mr. Speaker.
You're reading from
my notes.
From what
my
source?
Phone. No, this is my notes.
You're reading from the phone?
Yes, my notes, Mr. Speaker.
No, I just need the source. I'm not trying to prevent you. I just need the source to make sure it's a credible
my
source.
My understanding, having served as minister, is the source, Mr. Speaker. My understanding, yes.
No, honorable member. Honorable member. Honorable member. If you are reading from your phone,
yes,
all I need you to do is to indicate the source of the information.
It's a note. It's a note I made in the phone to myself, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, it's a note.
Just a moment,
let me finish
honorable
first.
member.
No, let me finish.
Yes. The chair recognizes the
But I
honorable
want to
member.
finish my point, though.
For Bamboo Town, just a moment.
Well, the member,
What is the point, honorable member?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the substantive minister, the member has already referenced the story that was done last night in regards to mail being shredded. But as the honorable member is on her feet, she is indicating that there is a process as to how mail is shredded. She was about to explain that. And I'm saying to the member, before she even goes down that road, having been the former member, she would understand that there is a process in place. And I'm advised, as the substantive minister, that that is the process that is being undertaken at this point in time.
Thank you, honorable member.
It's amazing. I was not even able to finish my point, and the member, anticipating what I was going to say, was able to counteract it. What is this, football? Speaker, I am advised, there was a story on the news last night. I would be grateful if I could finish my point, that the post office destroyed mails, and I believe the president of the union verified it. He expressed the concern of the Bahamas Public Services Union, who represents postal workers. He expressed the concern, I saw it myself on television, that mails that could have been coming to the union might have been intercepted by this process and destroyed. And so it is not in line with any process. And so I am raising the concern for the minister to, I'm assuming he doesn't have the information, to obtain the appropriate information and to bring an explanation to the Bahamian people. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that what happened or didn't happen. The minister needs to.
Might have.
You didn't know this? You need to speak to the minister.
What you just said.
Well, you know,
honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, we don't even know what happened because we don't know. All we know is the president of the union he is suggesting that it was not pursuant to a process. That's the point I'm making. I think East Grandma will understand me now. No, I'm not getting up. No, I'm not sitting down. No.
Point of order.
No.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Yes,
On a point of order.
Mr. Member referenced me. I just have a simple question. The president of the union at the post office is complaining that mail was shredded outside whatever the rules or the process is. And I'm just wondering, who is the one that is doing the shredding? Isn't it the same employees? So are they saying that they are deliberately, or are they suggesting that the minister has instructed the union to shred mail? I don't understand. And the thing that is curious, the union, according to the member, shredded his own mail and then complaining about it. I just want to hear the logic in that story, Mr. Speaker. Something don't add up to me, and maybe she can explain it.
You know, I am absolutely shocked at that response from the member for East Grand Bahama, that he is suggesting that postal workers will unilaterally and independently go and shred mail. I mean, it is a disgrace. That is a disgrace for him to say that.
Honorable members.
Who's she?
Misleading.
The member for Engliston.
The member for Engliston. It's misleading. That's not what I said. Mr. Speaker, what I did say is that the member said that the union president complained, based upon some report on TV, that his mail, the union's mail, was shredded by them without some process. I just want clarity.
Honorable member,
You tear up your own mail and complain about it. I don't understand.
That is the Deputy Prime Minister and the government, for him to raise that point in this Parliament. If there has been an issue, Speaker, if there has been the shredding of mail, he shouldn't come in here and shrug his shoulders. They should find out the facts, Mr. Speaker. And that is what I am saying, Mr. Speaker. The facts need to be ascertained, Speaker.
Honorable member.
No, I'm not, Speaker. The member needs to take it easy now.
On the point of order.
The member is again, and I guess I'm on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. The member could sit. No, you reference me.
He's stating a point of order. What is the point?
She's misleading. Again, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, resume your seat. I'm asking the member to state.
The member is again misstating what I said. The member for Angliston brought this matter to the floor of the House. And I simply stated her own words, Mr. Speaker, and I don't take it lightly. If a process was in fact breached, that is a serious matter. But the question that I simply asked is, if the union suggests that their mail was shredded inappropriately, well, who shredded it? And was that? I mean, it's a simple question.
Thank you, honorable member.
I didn't bring the issue.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
There's no humor in the situation. These are mountains of mail that belong to a variety, I believe, of Bahamians throughout the country. And so that would include the union members, this one, any other union, could be the nurses union, could be any union, could be any grouping, could be people in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, could be the speaker himself, could be anything. We don't know. I am querying the process. And so I am absolutely amazed that this has been the approach of this government. Instead of being accountable to the Bahamian people on what have made potentially been a very serious event. Yes, may, could, would. We want clarity. We want clarity. We want the facts. We want the facts, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, and the member for Bamboo Town who's not saying anything, and he's the smart one in the room right now. No, but you're the smart one in the room. Yes, and I hope that what you are saying, that you will carry out an investigation into the matter, because it's a serious matter. It's a serious matter. And you see, what we want to make sure is, I want to be careful speculating, because I don't want to do that to the staff of that post office or anybody. But we know that there is a push to relocate, and we have to make sure that everything is in order as we get to meet a deadline. The deadline went from December 25th to now the 1st of January. And so we have to make sure that the pressures on the postal staff are not such that they're not able to ensure strict compliance with procedures. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am putting on the record of this House a request for a formal inquiry and a report to this Parliament as to what happened with the mails, bearing in mind, sorry? And it... It's amazing.
Honorable member.
He doesn't know the process down.
And so, Mr. Speaker, no, it's actually it's confirming that there is an interest in this issue nationally. The people in this room think it's very humor in this hall, in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. But there is a concern with the Bahamian people as to what might have happened to mails. All we're asking for is and a report on accountability on the matter, and not take it from the realm of the frivolity that seems to have been attracted so far on the other side, and that there is a serious approach and we understand what is happening, Mr. Speaker. And so, Speaker, I close by saying that we welcome the government backtracking and revisiting the original position as it relates to the processing of business licenses. We all know that no matter what any external international agency report may tell us, that Bahamians are facing grave difficulty, including small businesses. It's a very, very tough environment to stay abreast of all of the requirements and all of the pressures and keep your doors open and keep people hired. And so we welcome initiatives that give some breathing room to businesses and small businesses in particular in this country. And we use the opportunity, as the member for Exuma did, to admonish the government in its movement forward, to engage in greater consultation, and to abandon this bull in the china shop approach that they seem to have adopted, you know, being brand new. I call it a level of arrogance even, but I won't pursue that language. But I would say a bull in the china shop, and that you seek to be more sensitive to the, as Exuma said, the intelligence level of your population and the needs of the country, and to bring policies and initiatives which facilitate, expand, bring growth, and not ones that create greater pressures on the Bahamian people, as you have been prone to do and have continued to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I spoke with the leader of government business, and we had agreed that we wanted to deal with this matter because it's basically what we call root. We heard from our lead speaker who spoke specifically to ask our views on, and he spoke briefly. I too will be brief, and of course you heard from the member from Engliston. Now, obviously, a member from your side didn't get the memo, right? And no, but it's still in the post. It's still in the post then. And when it gets up to broadside, the PLP, so we must sit small when it comes to finances. And you know, I am now of the view that this member is just deliberately disingenuous.
Yeah.
I had the occasion during the budget debate to correct his views about numbers that he was spewing.
That's right.
About our management of the economy. And I didn't use my numbers, I used the numbers put forward by the member for East Grand Bahama. And yet again he comes with the same narrative. You know, if he were to spend more time dealing with the issues that he describes in the Ministry of Health, perhaps we could find some resolution there. Right? If he does, if he becomes a full-time Minister of Health, as opposed to a part-time Minister of Health, perhaps we'll have more results in the services. Right? No, Mr. Speaker, this is the truth. Right? He's a part-time. Well, of course, I've spoken to the member for Kalani, and I will continue our conversations about whether he should remain as a part-time Minister of Health. I'll talk to him about it further. But it's curious. And so, I wonder if I should sit small because of this. Right? The people's budget. People's budget laid for the 2018-19. East Grand, he laid this. He laid this. And I'm not going to allow the member to leave on the record this perception of mismanagement, or we should sit small. I remind him that it was the member for Kalani who said that the F&M government in 2012 left the economy in a wheelchair. He said that. When we came in, we met it in the intensive care, quite frankly, all in a wheelchair. There was a deficit of over 555 million, right, in 2012. There was $100 million in vouchers unpaid. There was an overrun in the road program of over 100 million. There was the diversion of West Bay Street to accommodate the construction of Bahama, outstanding. That's what we meant, right? The point is, that was the deficit. From that day on to when we left office, the deficit was going downward. Right? The GFS deficit as a percentage of GDP was going downward. It's all in your book, right? In 2012, 2013, right? 13 to 14, I told you what the 2012-13 was. 13-14 was 488. It's in the book. Get it? I better pick it up, right? So the deficit, right, in 2013-14 was 488 million. We brought it down. In 2014-15 was 381. It reduced. So I said small for that. It's interesting. 2015, 2016, 310. 2016, 2017, 661. Yes. Now, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker. Now, if you go to the GFS deficit as a percent of GDP, your same book will point out that it was decreasing. In 2003, 2004, minus 0.4, 0.5. 2014, right? That's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I point out a dream. It's in your book. Pick your book up and look at it. I point out now, Mr. Speaker, right, what is interesting. If you go and look at those deficit numbers, I should sit small for that. And when last week, the Minister of Finance laid a resolution to borrow funds. And for the first time, I say, he acknowledges the impact of the hurricane. This is the first time he has ever said. No, Mr. Speaker, listen, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, on the point of order, East Grand Bahama, the chair recognizes honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
I would only refer the member back to the 2018-19 budget communication, and he would have seen, because he would have commented on it, where we spoke about the effects of those hurricanes. Further, Mr. Speaker, the only other point that I will make is that the numbers that the member refers to were prepared by his administration. And I'll leave that right there, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the member for Cat Island has the floor.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, the member for Cat Island from Kingston Harbor has the floor.
The member said that the numbers I'm quoting was prepared by us. We were not in office in 2018 to 2019. These are the numbers. You laid this book. It's after 1 year. Mr. Speaker,
honorable member, on a point of order.
What's point of order?
East Grand Bahama, on a point of order.
The numbers that are reflected for the years prior to 2017-18 were numbers that were prepared under their administration. They are a reprint of the numbers that they presented. And Mr. Speaker, the amount of unpaid bills that have been left behind is evident. And so when the member is talking about these numbers, he's not being completely transparent. As simple as that. I mean, he can carry on. I'm not taking away from his narrative. It's a good narrative, but it's untrue. It's not completely true.
Thank you.
Is the member of East Grand Bahama, our Minister of Finance, who laid this document after 1 year in office and holding that post. He is now abandoning and distancing himself from these numbers? Is he?
That's what he said.
Well, why would he? Is he? Well, if he isn't, those are the numbers I am quoting. Those are the numbers I'm quoting. And Mr. Speaker, the member did speak to the impact of the hurricane, but for the first time, he's ever assigned the full impact in numbers. That's the first time I've seen it, right? And he's done it, and this, I did. I commented, yes, I know I did. And so, Mr. Speaker, they say in this resolution that Hurricane Joaquin in 2015 caused $114 million to the economy. Right? That was $114 million. Right? So what do you think the deficit would have looked like in 2015, 2016? Right? If we did not have that loss? 196. That's that 196 million. That's what it would have been if that had not happened. Is that mismanagement? I should sit tall, sit small for that? Man, I should be standing tall, not sitting small. Mr. Speaker. And we go, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. For the first time, it's being acknowledged formally by this government that the losses for Matthew was 519 million. 519 million, right? And so, now, quite apart from the fact, Mr. Speaker, that the 661 million deficit as ascribed by the Ministry of Finance, what I call the fiscal authority, who by mismatch arrive at 661 million. Mismatch meaning, that's because you use the cash basis, you use the accrual basis. We were unsure what basis you're on. And don't let me...
A point of order. The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Again, you know, Mr. Speaker, I've said in this House before that I won't try to talk about the law, and persons shouldn't try to talk about accountants who don't necessarily understand it. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, and I've said it before, the basis upon which the government finances have been reported has not changed. Has not changed. We are seeking to move towards accrual-based accounting, but we have not, Mr. Speaker. The same basis that it was between 2012 and 2017 is the same exact basis that we are reporting today, Mr. Speaker. Same reporting. So you know, let's not blame that. You can use whatever else you want to use, but you can't confuse the Bahamian people to make them believe that there's not apples and apples here in respect to the way that the government finances are being reported, because that's untrue.
I pointed this. I don't have the statements made by this member on that issue, but I will withdraw the mismatch of cash basis and accrual basis until I bring what he has to say about it. Because, Mr. Speaker, the fiscal authority speaks to 661 million, but the monetary authority speaks to 231 million. What is the difference there? How does that difference occur? You know what I'm talking about? Because I raised it with you. Right? I raised it with you. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal authority is saying 661 million in deficit, but you have the monetary authority talking about 231 million, using the same basis. So perhaps you want to explain that and tell us about it. So now, Mr. Speaker, and so, but let us accept the minister's numbers of 661. When you take into account, then now acceptance that the economy loss 519 million, what then would have been the deficit in 2016-17? What would it have been? You lost that. You lost it. Right? What would it have been? 142. Should I sit small for that? Or tall? Right, Mr. Speaker? Right now, Mr. Speaker, I join no issue with the government criticizing or broadsiding us on choices that were made. Like we were. You know, is it mismanagement to spend $65 million on the Lucayan Beach Resort? Is that mismanagement? We'll say that's their choice they made. That's their choice we criticize. That's what we did. Right? That's what we did. But you could criticize our choices, but don't attribute it to mismanagement. Don't attribute that to mismanagement. Could I say that the choice to pay one vendor $60 million and not pay 30 or 40 other vendors that are owed millions of dollars, but you pay the one vendor, would I say? I ain't calling her name. I ain't calling her name. I call it. So is that I can say that's a choice they made. I could criticize that. But I could criticize that. But should I call it mismanagement? Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, what I say, Mr. Speaker, what I want to say is that, criticize our choices, give us a broadsides on what we may, how we may have done something, but it is wrong for you to be attributing imprudent management of the public purse by the previous administration. And I can go back. Don't let me go back. And I don't repeat it to discuss what I call the vitals of the economy. That you check to determine whether it's good or not. The Minister of Finance in his first, each of the vitals were improved and good health when we left it. We did not leave the economy. We did not leave the economy in a wheelchair. We did not leave it. And Mr. Speaker, with that, we do support the bill. I concur and accept the contribution made by members from Exuma, Ragged Island, and Engliston. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Anne's.
Mr. Speaker, for the last sitting of this year, it has been a very emotive and a lively debate on a bill that was supposed to be, on the whole, non-contentious. I wasn't going anywhere. So whichever side poisoned the water, and in the light of the joyous season, we ended with a very good debate, which will no doubt be continued elsewhere at other resolutions that come before this House. And as we go forward, this certainly with the business license bill, Amendment Bill number 2 before us, it has no which side of the street or which side of the street. This is a bill that affects all Bahamians and brings the status quo of business license back to where it was before the amendments were made in the budget debate. Part of the reason, which I think got messed in the general discussion, might have been that the effect of the bill we are amending, or the act we are amending, comes into effect on the 1st of January of this year. So I think the 1st of January coming. As Exuma alluded to, this is really a matter for the business community. Maybe there wasn't enough consultation, maybe there was. We can debate that going forward. But Mr. Speaker, I think the issues were adequately raised by the member of Killarney, the member for East Grand Bahama, before we took a slight side tour down memory lane and wherever we went. But in those few comments, I'd just like to stand and move the second reading of a bill for a business license amendment bill number 2, 2018.
Thank you, honorable members. Just before I put the question, as I sat through the lively debate, I got a good appreciation and a revelation of why Jesus came. And I trust that as we proceed to our luncheon, that the exchanges didn't affect our appetites in any adverse way. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Business License Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Business License Act.
For the second reading and committal of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further second readings. Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair. It is our intention, Mr. Speaker, to pass the bill before we go to lunch, and the House will then go to lunch. I understand that there's also the funeral of Ms. Zoe Maynard at 3, for which some members will seek to attend. But given the fact that there is other further House business that needs to be attended to today, the House will reconvene today at 5, and we will seek to pass the Senate amendments, just to clean up a little bit before we actually go to the break. So given the fact that we've had such a very spirited debate, we did not intend for it to take as long as it has. But given that we're now adjusting somewhat what we intend to do, I do move that the House, two resolutions, Mr. Speaker. One, that the House, the business of the House, do continue just a little bit beyond 1 p.m.
Second, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do extend beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House will be extended to beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House resolves itself into committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Seconder. It has been moved and seconded that the House now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the whole House in the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the whole House in the chair.
Committee of the Whole. Chair recognizes the member for Bambutown.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the long title of a bill for an act to amend the Business License Act be agreed.
Being moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Can I remind members that during the reading of and the passing that they would not be asked to be recognized by the chair, because I don't want to get the count wrong. So member for Exuma, can you please? Not during the, thank you. Many members that are in favor remains. Exuma? No, Exuma. Let me remind members that during, the chair has to recognize you before you come in, Exuma. Oh, is it? Oh, you were in going out, sorry. Members should not members should not be moving and making any gestures or moving or speaking when the chair is moving a resolution or speaking. So no member should be leaving or attempting to come in the chambers. Just a reminder.
During motion.
It's being moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I do move that the short title of the bill be now agreed.
Being moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title of the bill is agreed. If any members want to come in now, they can come in now. Or leave. Zuma. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
Do I have a seconder? It's being moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Mr. Chairman, I do now move that the Speaker takes the chair.
Being moved and seconded that the Speaker now do take the chair. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The Speaker would now take the chair. Speaker, I beg leave to report that the committee has gone through the bill, making no amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House has reported that the Committee of the Whole House has gone through the bill, having made no amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bill.
Mr. Speaker, I do move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Business License Act.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and pass. A bill for an act to amend the Business License Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a third time and pass.
A bill for an act to amend the Business License Act.
Honorable members, it is hereby ordered that the following bill, that the bill do now pass, and the title thereof be declared to be the Business License Amendment Act 2018. Further third reading and passing of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further third reading. I do now move that the House, that the business of the House suspends until 5 p.m. today.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 5 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the business of this House do suspend until 5 p.m. this afternoon.